Guys, I was wrong. I made a mistake. Christianity is actually true. Just kidding. I mean, I did make a mistake, but definitely not about that. In my last video, I talked about Samantha Fulnecky and her scandalous essay that she wrote about biblical things. And I had said that she probably wasn't directly attacking her teaching assistant, Mel Curth, because it was an online class and they had actually never met. It was just your typical Christian attacking transgenderism as a concept, not a personal attack.
Is that normal?
However, I was wrong. I went back and watched her videos, her interviews, and I am absolutely convinced that she knew her instructor was trans. So let me adjust my claim. Samantha Fulnecky wrote her essay as a horrible, half-assed attack on gender ideology and towards her teaching assistant, Mel Curth. Both. And this is yet again an example of the persecutors claiming victimhood to maintain their societal control. I actually have an upcoming video specifically about that, so that's your friendly reminder to like and subscribe. But today we're going to respond specifically to Samantha's interviews and videos, explain why this is so clearly a Christian nationalism move, and look at some nuance around the decision to fire Mel. Let's dive in. Alright guys, welcome to the Common Sense Cult, where we unravel Christian thinking, dissect apologetics, and criticize indoctrination. Today we're going to be looking at the effects of indoctrination with a follow-up on the Samantha Fulnecky scandal. In my last video, I shared my opinion on Samantha's theology-infused essay based on my educational and editorial background, and I talked about how I thought the whole situation was being used to perpetuate this Christian persecution, this Christian martyrdom complex. Now, I want to let you guys know that I had not looked at any of her interviews or any of her videos before filming my last video because I wanted to give her essay a very fair and balanced look. Now, since publishing that video, I have gone back and watched those interviews and her speeches, and I have to say I went pretty soft on her in my last video. What I saw from her, it drove me crazy a little bit. We are going to watch some clips from some of her videos, and I'm going to explain why she is just totally off base with what she says and definitely not a victim. The first half of this is going to be a bit of a rant for me because I'm just so frustrated with her responses, and yeah, it's going to be a bit of a rant. If you want a more measured response, you can skip ahead to my discussion about how this connects to Christian nationalism and the conversation about firing Mel, because there is some nuance that I would like to discuss there. But if you're here for the rant, get some popcorn and let's get started. All right, so the first video we're going to watch from Samantha is the one from Oklahoma's News 9.
I know I got the grade on the assignment on November 16th, I believe. I'm pretty sure it was the 16th. And then, yeah, it was. And then that was a Sunday, and the assignment was a week before that. So, yeah, it was in November, and then everything kind of, in the week following the grade is when everything, when I started to reach out to people.
So right off the bat, we can see that her essay also reflects some of her speaking skills. So listening to her talk, I'm not surprised at what she wrote at all. But that's not really the point. The point that I want to highlight here is that she started reaching out to people, multiple people, not just her instructor, right after getting her grade. But she says that the first person that she reached out to was her TA. And her answer here is what made me realize that, one, she knew that her TA was trans, and two, that her essay was therefore a targeted attack towards her teaching assistant. So let's listen.
The very first person I reached out to was the TA, the teacher assistant that gave me that grade. And I, one of his arguments was that, or one of his reasons.
Right there. His reasons. We have the screenshots of the TA, Mel Curth, responding to Samantha. And right there, right next to her name, it says she, they. It has her pronouns. And it also has a picture there, and it looks very feminine to me. I don't see how there could be any confusion about this. I don't know why she's calling the teaching assistant he. His reasons. I don't know why.
Yes, you do. I know you do.
If this was actually a case of Samantha writing an essay ranting about gender ideology and she didn't actually know that her teaching assistant was trans and she went, oops, I didn't know, I'm so sorry, that would be one thing. But the fact that she repeatedly says in this interview, he, his, well, everything on the TA's profile says the opposite, that their pronouns are she and they. This just screams to me that Samantha knew that Mel was trans and she went out of her way to specifically misgender them in this interview and, as we'll see, in other interviews as well. And now I just can't chalk this up to, oh, Samantha didn't know, she was just talking about a general idea and, oh, well, the professor's just offended about this. No, this is a very clear and targeted attack, and her consistent misgendering of her instructor screams that to me. Samantha knew her instructor was trans. I am absolutely convinced of it. And I think she's just denying it so that the blame can't come back on her. This is also not her first interaction with the teaching assistant. Keep that in mind.
Both of the TAs had released a couple announcements on Canvas saying, like reminders for this is how you do this kind of assignment.
Okay, but let's go back to why she disputed the grade.
Or one of his reasons for giving me a 0 was that I didn't use empirical evidence. And so I sent screenshots of the instructions and the syllabus to the instructor. And I said, it doesn't say anywhere that I need empirical evidence for this assignment. I asked that you would please reconsider my grade. And he said, no, I won't reconsider your grade. This is the grade you deserve. And he said that the other TA was in agreement with him.
So she initially requested the change in her grade because the rubric had not asked her to include empirical data. So she thought that it was unfair. She didn't include empirical data. The rubric didn't ask her to, so she shouldn't have gotten the grade that she got. That was the initial dispute. And to be fair, the rubric doesn't include anything about empirical data. Should juniors in college naturally be including them in their essays? Yes, but the rubric doesn't include it. That is a fair point there. However, the rubric does include a requirement to have a thoughtful response to the article. And as I addressed in my first video, she never directly cites or addresses the article, not once. And instead of doing that and meeting the bare minimum guidelines, she pulls on theology and doctrine. And even in doing that, still doesn't cite anything, not even from the Bible. So it's not just that she didn't include empirical evidence, it's that she did not even engage with the article at hand and pulled from a bunch of other irrelevant things without citing empirical data to support those points that she had. Mel even said in the message that she sent to Samantha, it's okay to disagree, but if you're going to do that, back it with evidence. And I bring this up because her original dispute about the grade was about empirical evidence. She didn't originally claim religious discrimination. She said, hey, I wasn't asked to include empirical evidence, why am I getting a 0? And then when Mel refused to change the grade and said, no, your grade stands because of discriminatory language, lack of engaging with the article, poor writing, etc., Samantha then starts contacting a shit ton of people and claiming religious discrimination. It wasn't originally about that. It was about the rubric and misunderstood expectations. So the story changes a bit.
Then after that, I emailed the department head of psychology at OU and the equity office at OU, and the president of OU and the dean of my arts and sciences college at OU, and then Ryan Walters.
This one, the Christian Nationalist who tried to force Christianity into public schools in Oklahoma.
And the governor and those people, so.
The governor. She contacted the governor over a fucking essay. What did she think he was going to do? Change her grade as the governor? That's not what governors do. What was she thinking? And keep in mind that this governor, the governor of Oklahoma, claimed every inch of the state for God and Jesus. Again, a Christian nationalist. So keep these two people in mind, the governor and Ryan Walters, because we'll come back to this whole Christian nationalist thing in a few minutes. Moving on. The interviewer asked an important question about whether the syllabus, not just the rubric for this specific assignment, but the syllabus for the whole entire class, whether it included requirements or expectations for including empirical evidence in essays. And I don't quite understand Samantha here, and I'm not including the quote because it's very hard to understand and she speaks in a very confusing way. But she essentially says that the syllabus was very broad and that the TA sent out clarifications. But then the clarifications that she lists that were sent out separately are the ones that are just listed on the rubric as part of the assignment instructions. So I don't really know if she herself understands the syllabus or even if she read the syllabus. I don't know. She seemed throughout this whole interview very unsure of what the expectations were for her.
Hey, look at me. I'm just working.
But still, I have to say, the general expectation for a junior in college, especially a pre-med one, someone who is studying psychology, they should be able to cite empirical evidence and know how to back their arguments with data. That is super basic. I would say even for a freshman, super basic. And she should still be doing that. But I digress. And if it were just about empirical evidence, Samantha wouldn't have gotten a 0. There are 3 different criteria that she did not meet. And Samantha doesn't even know what those criteria are.
And so it was, I'm recalling from my brain, but it was 2 10-point sections and 1 5-point section, right?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
And one of those sections was word count alone.
Yeah.
No, Samantha, it was not. None of the grading sections were about word count. There was a note about losing points for not meeting the word count, but none of the 3 criteria had anything to do with word count.
And in the other 2 sections, what were the other sections that graded you on?
I don't remember exactly. I think they were, one of them was maybe something to do with not summarizing the article, providing a thoughtful response to it. And I think another one was, what was it? It was something about,
I think I've got it actually.
yeah, I can't really remember. I think it was, making sure that it was a cohesive, you had cohesive thoughts.
Oh, the irony, Samantha. The 3 points were clear tie-in to the article at hand, which is where empirical data would have been greatly appreciated and would have fit in perfectly. The thoughtful response, yes, and then clear writing. She took this to the governor and she doesn't even understand what the expectations and the criteria were for the essay.
In your mind, what grade do you think you deserved?
100.
Samantha, what world are you living in? Absolutely nobody, even the people who are on your side defending you, thinks you should get 100%.
We have been getting these papers all semester, and I've written them all the same structure, same grammar. Obviously, I haven't changed my grammar.
Okay, great. So you admit your grammar and writing has been bad the whole entire semester. Fantastic.
So I've been writing them the same all semester, and I've gotten 100 on all of them up until this point. So I was shocked to get a 0, especially because I knew I understood how to do those assignments and what was required of me in those assignments. And based off of that rubric, I should get 100.
Okay, so here's where things start to get interesting and where some people do say that Mel was in the wrong for the grade that she gave. Samantha said that she has gotten 100% on every single other essay for this class with the same grammar and without empirical evidence. If what Samantha is saying is true, this could be a case of unfair grading. However, the 0 wasn't about the grammar. The 0 wasn't about the lack of empirical evidence. Those are parts of it, yes, but honestly, I would have given her a 0 and directed her to another major because that type of language and complete and utter dismissal of entire fields of psychology is massively inappropriate. None of the other articles that they had to read and react to were about controversial topics. And I mean, neither was this one, but that's how she interpreted it. She would know it wasn't actually controversial if she had actually read it.
We haven't had any topic like this one until this point. Some of the other ones were, it's lifespan development, so it's a psychology class, but it's called lifespan development. And some of the other ones were about gene expression in children and about how having siblings can affect children and how they think and how they mature and things like that. Very mild topics, just kind of about families and children, how they develop their gene expression and things like that.
Perhaps her half-assed writing style got it passed then because she wasn't as flagrantly dismissive and offensive in them. I don't know, just an idea.
They were all formatted the same. I think maybe the only difference is that I wasn't as passionate about those topics as I was about this.
Oh my gosh. I I also have to point out that the standard was already very low for grammar and writing quality just looking at the instructions. While her essay was absolutely atrocious, the instructions weren't that better themselves. And honestly, the grammar part was only 5 points for the whole thing. So to be honest, this never was really about the grammar. I don't think, as much as I focused on that in my last video because I'm a nerd, but this was more about a fundamental red flag that this girl should not be a psychologist or should not be a pre-med student. And besides that, she did not interact with the evidence. I know I keep saying that, but I just can't get beyond that. She did not interact with the article itself. And for that alone, I would have given her 0.
Same person who gave you 0 on this one also gave you 100s on all the previous ones.
To my knowledge, yes, yeah.
I kind of feel like this is what the university used for their investigation into this issue, because they never even contacted Mel to talk about this. And so, Samantha said that this was the first 0 she ever got. Well, Mel must be offended and she must be grading inappropriately, so she's fired. But we'll get back to that.
And in any of those prior assignments, had you incorporated any other outside scholarly articles, journals, anything of outside just your own thoughts and opinions ever before?
No, not at all. Just my thoughts and opinions.
And again, this is why I'm saying that she did not receive a 0 for lack of empirical evidence. She received a 0 because she did not meet the guidelines. And then she also used her personal religious beliefs and experience as a replacement for empirical evidence. It was never a question of did you or did you not use empirical evidence. It's about the rejection of data and implementation of personal religious views, and on top of that, inflammatory language.
I have had a lot of students reach out to me that go to OU saying that they are experiencing similar things in their classes, and that they have similar professors that are failing them or giving them bad grades, and they're just too afraid to speak up about it. So I haven't heard from people that are in my class, but I have heard it from other people that go to OU.
And that's what happens when you replace actual education with Christian indoctrination, Ryan Walters.
I'm sure it's been difficult to see a lot of people talk about your work online.
Yeah.
Samantha, we all know it's hard for you to receive constructive criticism, considering you went crying to the governor over thoughtful and kind feedback from Mel.
Even though they're saying that my writing isn't good and things like that, I think we can all agree that it doesn't deserve a 0 if you turn in the assignment.
No, I do not agree that just turning something in warrants points. I do believe in second chances and a chance at rewriting an essay, but not points for just turning something in, no.
So that's one kind of thought that I have with that. And then the other thing is just that it doesn't bother me at all that people are saying that online, because I never claimed to be an English major or, good at writing or anything like that. I don't think I'm a bad writer, but, that's not what I'm going to school for. And all of my classes are very rigorous science classes. So, people online that are like, oh, she's not a good writer. I'm like, well, I'm sitting in organic chemistry and physics classes all day. I'm not, learning in school to become a better writer right now. It's not my focus. So,
and one of the most basic skills needed in life is communication skills. Nobody is saying you're an English major, Samantha, but this is worse than high school, perhaps even middle school essays. If you cannot write a coherent, well-researched essay, you should not graduate college, let alone be a pre-med student and pursue a degree in medicine.
When people are taking that piece of it and running with it, they're missing the whole point, and they're really just ignoring the problem and trying to nitpick things, and I don't appreciate that.
Okay, Samantha, I will give you that. I was extremely nitpicky on your essay, and not as nitpicky as I could have been. Keep in mind, yes, I focused on grammar a bit too much considering it was just 5 points. And I actually do agree with you that many people are missing the point about what this is actually about.
Because, I'm standing up for my freedom of speech and freedom of religion, and, standing up for my beliefs, and that's not an easy thing to do. So when people are picking, one of the weakest and, in the nicest way, like one of the dumbest arguments that you could have against, this whole situation, one thing that you're going to nitpick is my writing. It just seems like a waste of time.
Oops, no, not that. What this is actually about is that you are fundamentally unequipped to become a psychologist due to your inability to separate your personal beliefs from actual data and understand that, one, pushing your beliefs on other people are harmful, and two, that not everyone does or should believe the same thing as you do. Also, what this is actually about is you seizing an opportunity to rage against an already marginalized group, which is not okay.
You know, my beliefs aren't just something that I care about when I'm in church or, you know, reading my Bible, but it's something that I live out every day. And that's really why I talked about it in this setting.
And because this is a setting where your instructor is trans, let's be completely honest here.
Now, on the subject of citations, some people say that even withstanding the ability to cite the Bible, they say that you didn't cite a verse, that there's not like an actual whole, that it was more what they would call like a generalization.
Yeah.
The Bible at large says this. And they're making this argument that there was not a specific citation to a portion of biblical text. What do you say to those folks?
Yeah, I mean, they're right. I didn't specifically cite one verse of the Bible or one portion of the Bible.
Yeah, this is a good point. Many news sources claim that she failed because she cited the Bible, and she actually didn't cite anything. So,
but the instructions asked us to, you know, pull from our personal experiences and give a thoughtful reaction based off of, you know, prior experiences and knowledge and, you know, things that you already, you know, have opinions on and things. So that's what I did, and I feel like...
Yeah, no, Samantha, there is nothing in the instructions telling you to pull from your prior opinions and knowledge. One application in the instructions was to apply the article to your experiences, but nothing about pulling from your opinions or your prior knowledge. Again, if you're going to complain about this and take it to the governor and take it to right-wing activists, I think you should at the very least, know what the expectations for the essay actually were.
And I've noticed that you've not really taken an attack against the graduate teaching assistant themselves.
Yeah.
And in particular, I've seen a lot of other articles and people who've brought up that they identify as a transgender person. You've not brought that up yet, and I noticed that in your Channel 5 interview as well, you said I'm really not, I don't really care.
Yeah.
And so it seems to me, correct me, that's not really the issue at hand for you.
Yeah, it's definitely not the issue at hand. It's an online class, so I didn't know who the professor was, who the TAs were. I never had to interact with them. I had no idea that the TA was transgender because I didn't need to have any interaction with him. So,
yeah, I no longer believe you, Samantha. You are repeatedly misgendering them throughout this video alone, and that diminishes your argument. You also said that the DA had sent out previous updates, so that whole no prior interaction with them is not true. Also, we all saw the she/they pronouns in the instructor's profile when they were chatting about the essay. And according to conservative Christians, like the ones that she contacted at Turning Point USA, that is considered demonic. Might I remind you of the post that they put on Instagram when Mel Curth was fired? You know, the one saying, "Oh, isn't it nice to be on campus where there's one less she/they here?" No, I understand that including pronouns on a profile like she/they does not make someone trans. I get that. But including pronouns, especially they pronouns, is a massive signal to conservative Christians that, ooh, woke gender ideology, which is exactly what you were arguing against in your essay, Samantha. You never actually engaged with the actual article at hand. So, Samantha, I think you are full of shit.
It never, you know, occurred to me that when I was writing about my opinion that would offend the TA personally, and I didn't write that to like attack the TA or, you know, things like that.
Yes, I understand that you don't see it as an attack because Christians pose these things as love, you know, speak the truth in love. I get that you don't see it as an attack. That doesn't mean it's not an attack.
It breaks my heart that he is going through something so public, and people are saying so many mean things about him. That was never my intention. You
are saying mean things right now by repeatedly misgendering them. Ugh. If you are so concerned with Mel's well-being, how about you stop purposefully misgendering them at every chance you have? Acknowledge you went too far. Acknowledge your essay sucks. Accept the 0. Give an apology. Learn. Do better. You're full of shit, Samantha. I repeat, full of shit.
My heart is always to lead people to Christ and to show them the love of God and to just, show them, how Jesus has truly changed my life and tell people that that's available for their lives too.
See, what she's doing is an attack disguised as love. Just what she wrote about in her essay, that it's okay to bully other people when they don't agree with Christian values. And that's what she's doing to Mel publicly, bullying her and calling it love. And listen to what she says about whether or not there's a middle ground between whether she's right or Mel's right.
Being neutral on a topic or being in the middle is really just being too afraid to say what you really believe sometimes. And I think that goes for this situation too, because, you can be like, well, the university was in the wrong, but, she's technically not a good writer either. I think people should just take one side or the other and, be confident in what you believe in. Don't back down from that and don't think that, you can't voice that. Obviously, I'm, learning that it's hard to do that, easier said than done, I guess. But, I don't really think there's, I don't really think there's a neutral ground.
This is a classic us versus them cult control tactic, and it's one that Christians often use to perpetuate the idea that the world, society, etc. are constantly fighting against them. Remove nuance. It's all good versus evil, black and white. They're wrong and evil, we're right and good. There actually is a middle ground, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes.
This situation and maybe even just politics in general can be really divisive sometimes and can turn people against each other pretty easily. And that's something that I don't like. And, I don't want this situation to be something where people think that, this is something that's being used to cause division.
Oh my gosh, this is just so utterly ridiculous. You are quite literally causing division, Samantha. You also just said that there is no middle ground and people need to take sides. That is also quite literally causing division.
Let me check my notes real fast just to make sure I've touched on everything. The second TA weighed in as well and also was in support with the other TA.
Yeah.
Did that surprise you at all?
Not really. I mean, I feel like if they're working together in a class, it's to be expected that she would take his side.
Oh my God, Samantha, that's not how this works. Instructors aren't just in complete agreement because they work together.
I wasn't super surprised by that, but I was surprised that, they doubled down on it and said, no, this is really the grade that you deserve. That part shocked me.
It shouldn't shock you at all. It should actually be a wake-up call that you might have actually deserved the grade that you got, and it's not about religious discrimination against you.
My heart behind this and what I hope comes out of this is I hope it unifies Christians, and I hope that, it empowers them to go out and speak truth and to spread the gospel, and of course to do that in love, but not to shy away from, what people will think of them or what their professors will say or what their friends will say. And our only judge at the end of the day is God. And so I want to make sure that I'm doing what God has called me to do and empowering others to do that too.
So you are strengthening the Christians as planned against already marginalized people, yet not divisive at all, Samantha. Whew. Okay, that was a long interview. Here's a shorter one from OU Nightly.
Part of the goal is to get my grade fixed. I think my bigger goal is to hold the university accountable for hiring people like this.
Hiring people like what, Samantha? Like what? Trans people? Is that what you're trying to say? Because that's what it sure seems like from your essay and from the post from Turning Point USA, who you contacted and where you spoke at. Or are you referring to people who actually care about the field of psychology, actual research, and children's well-being? Because that's what Mel sounds like based on her messages.
Another one of my goals overall is to encourage people to stand up for their beliefs.
Encourage people to stand up for what they believe in only if they're Christians is what you actually mean.
The Bible clearly states that God made man and woman and made them each in his image.
So men and women are both reflections of God. So God is gender fluid, trans, non-binary. It seems like the LGBTQ plus community would be a better reflection of God rather than you who are stuck in only one form of representing God. No?
God is very intentional with everything he makes, and that he doesn't make mistakes.
Wait, he doesn't make mistakes? So he creates people with deformities, diseases, disabilities on purpose. Amazing. So loving.
And so I don't really think that kids are pressured to fit into gender stereotypes or gender norms.
You are quite literally forcing people into gender stereotypes.
Now my message to the TA would just be that I didn't mean anything I said offensively, or I didn't mean any harm by it, and I definitely don't agree with people online saying mean things about that TA. That was never my intention.
Intention is not the same as impact. You may say you didn't intend to hurt Mel, but you did, and you continue to do so every time you misgender her.
And I would just say that God loves him, and God, has a purpose for his life.
Such a classic deflection move. God loves you, and that's why it's okay that I bully you.
I do think they're doing the right thing by putting the TA on administrative leave. If you can't, do your job right in any setting, you get fired. So
she did her job. As I said in my last video, I would have given her the same grade and also taken it to the academic counselor for Samantha and said, hey, this should not be a student in psychology or pre-med. And I would have done that to protect her future patients from someone like her, ethically speaking. And according to her own logic, let's just think about this for a minute. Samantha should actually be the one getting fired or removed from her degree focus because she showed an incapability to perform ethically as a psychologist. As she said, don't do your job well, get fired. So don't show your capability to perform ethically as a psychologist or a doctor, and you get removed from the program. So Samantha, when are you going to apply that same logic to yourself?
Never meant to offend that TA or offend transgender people and make them think that, that they're demonic or that they're not loved by God, because that's not true.
Are you sure, Samantha? Did you read your own essay? Did you or did you not speak at a Turning Point USA event where they openly say that transgenderism is demonic? All right, last video, and this is the one from where she actually spoke at a Turning Point USA event at the Oklahoma University chapter.
In my psychology class, it's lifespan development, and I was asked to read an article and react to the article and give my opinion on gender stereotypes and gender norms.
No. You were not asked to give your opinion on gender norms and gender stereotypes. No, you were asked to provide a thoughtful response to an article that discussed how gender typicality affects students' mental health and popularity.
I didn't know that the TA grading it was transgender, and didn't find that out until it blew up on social media.
I still don't believe you, Samantha. Based on your own words, the TAs were in contact with the students, and they have pronouns in their titles. Again, while a she/they pronoun does not mean that someone is transgender, it would be labeled as dangerous ideology by conservative Christians like you. Also, your storyline doesn't line up at all. You said that you didn't know your instructor was trans until everything blew up on social media. But who was the one to claim religious persecution in the first place? And then contact everyone, including groups who openly oppose transgender individuals. It was you, Samantha. You escalated this situation. You made it blow up on social media. You made this about religious persecution, not just a grading dispute. So I would love to know how you conveniently ignored the instructor's pronouns on their profile for the first 2 to 3 months of the semester. I would love to know how the news outlets got word that the instructor was trans before you even found out. And I would also love to know how the first posts about this whole situation were from the conservative groups that you contacted and were mostly about the fact that it was a transgender instructor versus a Christian student. If you didn't know that the instructor was trans until after everything blew up, how did they get this information? Why did they have it in the first place? Who would have brought it to them except you? You were the one that went out contacting them. It was you, and you knew.
The TA said that my writing is offensive and that I need more empathy in my work and things like that.
This is actually something that she got right. Yes, the instructor did say that.
He also said that
Oh, misgendering again. Yay!
I can't use my own personal ideology to defend an opinion that goes against the consensus of every medical field and every medical association in the United States, which is false.
I'm sorry, what? It's false? How? This is where empirical evidence is needed. All you have backing your stance is religious ideology. You can still have your worldview, but you can't use it to reject the piles of evidence to the contrary. I mean, I guess you technically can, and you did in your essay, but you shouldn't be a practicing psychologist or doctor if your personal religious views trump actual statistics, data, and evidence.
And I also referenced biological differences in male and females.
No, you didn't. Let's fact check you.
My goal is that, it can be scary to stand up for what you believe in, but it's so worth it.
Well, for you it is. Look what you've got out of this. Completely disregarding what you've done to Mel and an entire marginalized group.
And I just want to encourage you guys to stand up for what you believe in.
While pushing everyone else down and ignoring actual evidence.
It's so important as a Christian to talk about what you believe in and not to just label yourself as a Christian and go to church on Sundays and not do anything about it in your personal lives. That's not how we spread the gospel. That's not how people come to know Jesus.
Wait, so how do we spread the gospel? By getting trans professors fired and crying to the governor? Is that how? Ugh, okay, that is enough listening to her. I am getting flashbacks from when I was a very conservative Christian who also said shit like this. And yeah, that's enough. Anyways, I hope through my rant you were able to see how Samantha is definitely, positively not a victim. Not only did she not do the actual assignment and then bragged about how fast she actually did it.
Was it hard for you to come up with the things that you wanted to say?
Not at all. I was actually just telling this story earlier. I was at my my good friend. I was at her house, and we were about to go to a musical that OU was putting on, or a play. And I was like, oh, I have to do this assignment really quick. It'll just take a second. And then I read the topic, and I was like, oh, this is going to be so easy. Like, I have a very strong opinion on this topic. And then I wrote it in maybe like 30 minutes. It was really easy for me to come up with things to say.
But she doesn't even understand the rubric, the article, or how her religious ideology does not, in fact, trump evidence. While she claims to have not known that her instructor was trans and not meant any harm towards her, I just don't believe it. She purposely blew this whole thing up, contacting anti-trans groups and activists, and now continues the harm by purposefully misgendering them and refusing to admit that she might have actually been in the wrong. Well, let me be completely fair. She is still quite young, and I do understand that she is a victim of this Christian nationalist mindset and worldview, specifically from her mother, who has been a public figure pushing things like "In God We Trust" in government buildings, and also defending the people who marched on January 6th. So in looking at that and seeing who the influences in her life have been, I do understand that she is a victim of that whole mentality. I get it. But in this situation, she has moved from being just a victim to also being a perpetrator. I also think her mom, Christian Fulnecky, is playing a pretty big role here. Now, this is purely speculation, but as I said, her mom has been a public figure for quite some time in the Christian conservative circle. She is an outspoken Christian attorney, and that makes her someone who would know who to contact in these situations and also what types of things to keep quiet. I think it is completely plausible to say that her mom told her to say that she didn't know that her instructor was trans. 100%. And it wouldn't even be considered a sin or a lie because she was never 100% sure her instructor was trans. It was just a hunch. It just said they never said she was trans. She didn't actually know, but she suspected. And I think that's something that her mom would have said, no, it's not a lie. It's okay if you say that because you didn't actually know. As someone raised in this type of environment with a parent who is extremely focused on what the public thinks of us and was extremely manipulative, I think this makes perfect sense. I think her mom was like, hey, don't say you actually knew they were trans. Let's keep that on the down low. Makes perfect sense to me. And again, all speculation, but looking at the evidence, hearing Samantha's interviews, reading about her mom, it honestly sounds like she saw an opportunity and took it. And what exactly was that opportunity? To push Christian nationalism. The move to contact Ryan Walters gave it away for me. I have a whole video about his policies, before he switched from the state superintendent to the CEO of Teacher Freedom Alliance. And I have been following his career very closely. He is someone who has been twisting history and the Constitution to promote child religious indoctrination.
Wait, are you serious?
He is someone who has openly criticized gender-affirming policies in schools. In other words, he is someone who would automatically see Mel Curth as the bad person and Samantha as the good person. And actually, here's what he said about the matter.
Ryan Walters. Ryan, great to have you on the show. I want to give you the Oklahoma statement here. University of Oklahoma said, quoting, OU remains firmly committed to fairness, respect, and protecting every student's rights to express sincerely held religious beliefs. We should note this TA was put on leave, but it sounds to me like Oklahoma put that statement out after they got caught. Ryan, am I wrong, or what's happening here?
Oh, you're 100% right. And you just heard Samantha, as the former Oklahoma State Superintendent, we're so proud of her from Oklahoma, and the country is proud of her stand for her Christian faith. The only thing she did wrong, according to the University of Oklahoma, she held a Christian belief. It is absolutely absurd that they take a position that, quoting from the Bible, putting forth her personal opinion that most Americans hold, certainly most Oklahomans hold, is out of line, offensive. It is absurd. But Trace, it shows you the anti-Christian bias in education is running rampant across the country. Even in red states like Oklahoma, we've got to fight back. We've got to stand for people who are just simply sharing their faith. And again, Samantha's a hero for Oklahomans and for the country.
Samantha's a hero, and there's an anti-Christian bias. This is the guy that Samantha contacted. I could go on for about an hour about how wrong Walters is, but the point here was that it was a calculated move on Samantha's part. Or perhaps her mom's. I don't really know who was in control of things here. Walters has completely no jurisdiction here. Even when he was superintendent of Oklahoma, he had no jurisdiction over universities. He was in charge of K through 12 public schools, not colleges, not universities. And now as CEO of Teacher Freedom Alliance, he is overseeing educators. So he should be supporting Mel, but she is neither a certified educator nor someone who is ideologically aligned with what the Teacher Freedom Alliance stands for. So of course he's not going to support her. So I have to ask, why would Samantha contact him? He can't do anything in this situation. Let's review the list of people that Samantha contacted. She first reached out to Mel, didn't get the answer that she hoped for. She then reached out to the university administration, didn't get the answer she had hoped for. Then she reached out to Turning Point USA, and that got a lot of traction. And keep in mind that it is a very transphobic organization, and it is posting disgusting things about Mel. The next contact for Samantha was politicians and high-profile activists like Ryan Walters. So she didn't get the support that she wanted from the university, and then Ryan Walters even blames the university for putting the instructor on leave only because this whole situation blew up. So because she didn't get that support from the university itself, she went with Christian nationalist activists who she knew would see this as an anti-Christian attack and create a whole persecution narrative.
Pretty sneaky, sis.
And again, this is another reason why I don't believe Samantha when she says that she didn't know her instructor was trans. Why would you contact openly transphobic Christian nationalist groups over a grading dispute, supposedly about empirical evidence? You contact those people when you want to push a narrative of Christian nationalism and Christian persecution, especially against the woke gender ideology. When you have such large groups and high-profile activists on your side, it's very easy to silence the opposition and maintain your control in that victim narrative. It is classic bullying behavior, and Mel deserves justice. Speaking of Mel, she has finally broken her silence. Her attorney, Brittany Stewart, has made a statement on her behalf, and it says, "Today, my client Mel Curth submitted her appeal of the university's Institutional Equity Office, finding that she engaged in arbitrary and capricious grading of a student's assignment in violation of that student's religious liberty. Ms. Curth fully denies that she engaged in any discriminatory behavior. It is her position that the investigation was flawed, failed to consider all possible motives and issues, and that new evidence has come to light that undermines the investigation's conclusion. In this case, the complaining student sent an email to OU to institute the complaint against Ms. Curth while CCing overtly political actors such as disgraced former Oklahoma Superintendent Ryan Walters, who is known for his virulent anti-LGBTQ positions. Despite this fact, investigators failed to examine whether the student may have had an ulterior motive in pursuing such a complaint. Furthermore, the university has continued to issue public statements regarding the investigation, despite confidentiality rules that kept Ms. Curth from being able to discuss any details of the situation, while the student was going on a circuit of local and national television interviews. During one interview, the student admitted that she merely looked at the topic and then rushed together a response based on her personal feelings regarding a tangential issue that was the main thesis of the assigned article because she was in a hurry to go and see a play that evening with her friend. Rather than engaging in discrimination, Mel Curth has been the target of a political movement that seeks to silence and or oust LGBTQ people from academia. Ms. Curth will continue to fight back against these harmful allegations. I am very happy that Mel is willing to fight this and has sought legal help. But remember when I said that there was some middle ground here, unlike what Samantha said that you have to pick sides? I want to talk about that because I don't think this is a discussion simply of whether Samantha was right or Mel was right. Samantha is allowed to express her religious views, not in lieu of evidence and never to harm people, but she does have that right. And also, Mel shouldn't have been fired. Beyond that, I think there's a lot to discuss regarding grading, class expectations, rubrics, and the overall education system at OU. As I have mentioned, the instructions for the assignment were horribly written. And I think it's unfair to grade students on their written clarity if the instructions themselves aren't written well or clearly. And then there's the rubric. There are 3 criteria that are extremely vague. So what constitutes a thoughtful reaction? Why would someone get 8 points out of 10 versus 5 points out of 10? What constitutes sufficient tie-ins to the article? What would you lose points for? This is where having a comprehensive rubric would have helped massively. For example, you could have given an example of a 2-point example of how to tie in the article versus an 8-point example of how to tie in the article. A very well-written article would look like this, and a very poorly written article would look like this. If you have these 3 points for the thoughtful response, you would get a 10. If you only have 1, you would get a 2. I don't know. This is something that the rubric would have to explore. But if you have something like that, a very comprehensive rubric, then the students know what the expectations are, and also the instructors would be able to remove any unconscious bias or partiality that they might have when grading because they know what the grading expectations are. Now, did Mel write the instructions? I have no idea. Did she write the rubric? I also have no idea. But these are things that a certified educator should be in charge of. These are things that I literally had to study to finish my degree to become a teacher. Mel is not a teacher. She is a graduate student, a teacher's assistant. And as an assistant, she should not be responsible for everything. She should not be responsible for creating and grading and then receiving all the fallback when something goes wrong. She is simply an assistant. If there's a grading dispute, take it up with the professor. And speaking of the professor, where the fuck is the professor? Why is Mel handling an extremely delicate situation alone? Where is her support? Where is the support from her professor, from the university? I honestly think that Samantha deserved the 0. However, there could have been so many different and better ways to handle this situation. Something that an experienced professor might have been able to implement. For example, I would have given Samantha the opportunity to rewrite the essay given her feedback, and then also probably rewritten the rubric to avoid these situations in the future. And also perhaps a discussion between the professor and Mel to talk about what happened, how to handle these situations, what to do in the future. There are things that could have been done with the professor, an experienced educator in this situation. Mel should not have been left to handle this alone. But honestly, Mel handled it to the best of her capability as a graduate student, as a teaching assistant. She should not have been fired over this. Grading disputes happen. We've all gotten grades that we don't think we've deserved. It happens. And this very vague rubric for the class helps absolutely no one, not the students or the instructors. Mel should have had a conversation with a superior, gotten some feedback, some training maybe, and moved on. I repeat, Mel is not a certified educator. She is a student who is working probably to pay for her own education. She deserves support from her superiors, not to be fired. With all that in mind, I want to address the claims of arbitrary grading because the University of Oklahoma claims to have done an investigation, of course, without actually talking to Mel about this. And it supposedly looked at Mel's grading habits. And as we heard from Samantha, this was her first time getting a 0 in this class. And so dropping from 100 for all other essays to a 0, it does seem like arbitrary grading at first glance. However, if you actually listen to Samantha, you'll hear that there are a lot of other variables that made this a very unique situation.
They were all formatted the same. I think maybe the only difference is that I wasn't as passionate about those topics as I was about this one.
Had you in any of those prior assignments ever leveraged the Bible before as a citation?
Not in the same way that I did with this essay. This one was very much, we are more so being asked for our opinion, and my opinion heavily comes from the Bible. So I reference the Bible a lot more in this one.
And you mentioned your other classes that you're enrolled in. In any of those, have you ever brought up in an assignment capacity your religious background before?
No, I haven't. I think, I've never been put in a situation where that was a possibility because all of my classes have been science classes.
So as you can see, this is the only time that Samantha relies heavily on religious ideology as evidence, something that you can't really do in a science class. And this is also the only time that the article is about a controversial topic. And I mean, it wasn't, but that's what Samantha interpreted it as. And this was also the only time she got a 0. So what this tells me is that Mel saw multiple red flags in a psychology major, someone who dismisses evidence, ignores entire fields of psychology, rejects data, prioritizes abstract religious ideas over empirical evidence, and also defends childhood bullying. Given what Samantha has said about the class and her past essays, this is probably the first time that all of these red flags have shown up in an essay. So that's why she got a 0. It's the first time that she didn't actually engage with the data, and she instead replaced evidence with theology, and she went on a tangent about a completely unrelated topic. It's not religious discrimination, but a real concern about Samantha's perspective and take on this topic. Might I also add that psychologists and doctors take an oath to do no harm to patients. This essay is harmful. It defends practicing harm towards children. Ethically speaking, this is not an okay essay for a pre-med student. This is not an okay essay for someone as a psychology major. For that reason alone, grammar aside, empirical evidence aside, for that reason alone, she deserved a 0. Now, if you want to debate whether students should get points just for turning things in, that's a whole other can of worms. I personally don't agree with that. I believe in second chances, but that's a whole other topic, right? Regardless of that, I do not think Mel graded arbitrarily. She graded fairly on an essay that was abnormal for Samantha, something that Samantha herself admits to. Mel also deserves more support and some fucking peace as a grad student. All right, guys, that is the end of my rant. I probably won't do another update on this topic unless something crazy pops up, but I just had to come back and add a few more points based on her interviews. And this is so obviously a Christian nationalist move that, yeah, it's just blowing my mind how she has so much support behind her. I honestly don't understand it. But let me know what you think in the comments. Please make sure to like and subscribe. I have so many more videos in the making, and I can't wait to share them with you. But until then, question everything.